Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Minecraft modding tutorial for version 1.19. In this tutorial we are going to be making a custom flower. So this is something I don't think I've ever actually made a tutorial on. However, it's something that I'm making so that I can do flower generation in a future tutorial, because I think that would be something a little bit interesting and I think people would be interested in it. So let's just get started, shall we? So all we need to do is come into our block init, and we need a new block. So let's go public static final registry objects. Now this is going to be of type flower block, and this will be called example_flower is equal to register example_flower, and then we're going to give it a supplier of a new flower block. Now first, this is going to take in a mob effect. Now I know that's probably quite strange, like why does a flower need a mob effect? That's slightly weird, but this is for suspicious stew. So I personally don't really know anything about suspicious stew. All I know is that you make it with flowers or something, and you get an effect from that suspicious stew depending on the flower. So the effect that I'm going to put in here, I don't know what ones are default, so I'm just going to put dig speed in there. And then you have another integer, so not another integer, you have another parameter which is the integer, which is the duration of the effect, so how long it lasts. I'm just going to give it 300. And then you just have block properties, so block behavior dot properties dot, and I'm actually going to use something I haven't really talked about yet, and that is copy. So this allows you to copy from a specific block, so to just copy their behavior, and I'm going to copy from blocks dot I'll copy from dandelion. There you go. And also, of course, we need to supply the default item properties so that it can create our block item. Item.properties.tab, and that'll be tutorial mod.tab. And if we just plonk this on a new line, bring it over, there we go. That is that. Yeah, that's it. So now you may think that would work, but that will not work. So there is one thing we need to go ahead and do, and because flowers they have transparency, right? So there is sort of holes in the texture, if you will. It means that this won't work by default, because the way Minecraft works is by default it assumes every texture is opaque, so it will fill all of the transparency with black, and that's not great because you don't want a black box as your flower. So we need to go ahead and create a new class, and how should we do this? There are many ways we can do this, but what we need to do this basically is an event, and we need to set something called the render type. So let's create events. We'll call this mod client events. Will that work? That won't work. Okay, for now we'll just leave it there. I'll move it later. Now this class needs to have an annotation, which is @mod.eventBusSubscriber. Now this first takes in the mod ID, and that is tutorial mod.mod_id. Then it takes in something known as the bus, and that needs to be bus.mod. And we'll need to import that. So that's mod.event bus subscriber.bus.mod. And finally, we need something known as the value, and that is just dis.client. I'm not really going to explain any of this because I want to make a separate events tutorial in the future, but essentially this is our mod ID here. This is the bus that it runs on, which is either the mod bus or the forge bus, and then this is the side that it will run on. So specifically we want this to run on the client side. Then we need to have an annotation, which is @subscribe event, and then we need a method which will be public static void, and then we can call this client setup, and this will take in an FML client setup event, which we can call event. And then all we need to do is do item block render types dot set render layer. Then this will take in the block that we want to set it for. So for us, that is block init dot example flower dot get, and then it's just the render type. So that will be render type colon, and we want to use cutout. We actually can't do that, it has to be just a normal called method. Fantastic, and that will now work. The final thing we need to go ahead and do is obviously, as usual, the JSONs. So let's come into here, let's create block.tutorialmod.example_flower, and that will be example flower. Then let's go into our block states, and I'm just going to copy example block and change it to example flower. Fantastic. Then let's come into models block and change it to example flower. Now this is going to be slightly different because flowers are obviously not a full block. They are instead a sort of cross shape. So what we need to use instead of cube_all as the parent is cross. And I believe all changes to cross. I'm just going to check that real quick. Okay, I have just confirmed that is correct. It is indeed cross. That's exactly how I thought it would be. And finally, we need to go ahead and do the item model. So the item model for flowers, you generally actually want to use a normal item model rather than a block model. And I'm going to do the same. So all I need to do is say example_flower, but instead of using items here, because our texture is in the blocks folder, we need to use blocks. And there we go, that will be our flower. Let's just make sure our texture is here. Yes, it is. I just copied the allium, to be honest, and did some minor adjustments. And that is it. Obviously, you might want to do the loop tables as well. Let's just do those. That'll be very, very quick. Example_flower. Example flower. Fantastic. And boom. That's it. We now have a flower. So let's go ahead and run the game. Alright, as you can see, we're in the game. So if we place down a flower pot and try to place in our flower, that won't work. I'll explain why in a minute. But we can place down our flower and it doesn't have any transparency issues. And obviously it can be placed on the correct blocks. You can't place it on wood, for example. You have to trust me that I'm clicking that right now. And yeah, obviously it should also break and drop itself, which it does. Fantastic. So why didn't the flower pot work? Well, It's because we actually need to go ahead and register a flower pot block. So luckily that is super easy to do, and you know what, we'll do it in this tutorial. Why not? It's only going to take a few seconds. So let's just close the game and just wait for it to close. There you go. Okay, let's come into our source main Java. Let's come into our block init, and we need to do public static final registry object. This will be of flower pot block, example underscore flower underscore pot is equal to, and this time we're not going to use our register method because we don't want a block item for this. So we're just going to use blocks.register. Example underscore flower underscore pot, and then we want a supplier of a new flower pot block. Now this is first going to take in our flower, so that will be example flower, and then it's going to take in the behavior, right? So block behavior dot properties dot copy, and we'll do blocks dot flower pot. Fantastic. Now you see that doesn't work, and that's because it actually needs to be block init dot example flower, and it doesn't like that. Why doesn't it like that? Did I do that wrong? Ah, of course. So this essentially is right, that's fine. However, we need to define what the empty pot block is, and we can do that by using blocks.flowerpot and then this. So supplier like that. It doesn't like this. Why doesn't it like this? The empty pot, the flower block. So do I need to cast this because have Mojang done some jank here? They have, right, okay. There we go. So that, and then it needs a supplier of our block, and we can just pass this in like it is, because as I was saying a few tutorials ago, registry objects are just suppliers, so we can just pass that straight in. That is fantastic. Now the other thing we do need to make sure we do is once again go ahead and set the render layer, render type I mean. So we can once again do item block render types, dot set render layer, block init dot example flower pot dot get render type dot cutout. Fantastic. So the other thing we need to go ahead and do is we need to do the JSONs. Okay, so let's just minimize these. Let's first do our lang, although it doesn't really matter, but we'll do it anyways. So it's tutorial marge colon, not colon, example underscore flower underscore pot, and I'll just call this a potted example flower. Fantastic. Let's do the block state. So this is just going to be a normal block state, nothing too special. And that finally we need to do the block model. So example underscore flower underscore pot. Now this is once again going to be slightly different. We need to use, instead of cube underscore all, the parent needs to be flower underscore pot underscore cross. And instead of all here, we need to use plant. And once again change this to our flower texture. We can go ahead and do an item model if you want, just in case somehow there was an item. But I'm not going to bother with that because I know there's not going to be an item. Just wouldn't make sense. Final thing, you can go ahead and do the loop tables. So let's come into here. Now I've already got a loop table generator, and I've grabbed the preset potted allium as mine. It doesn't really matter which preset, however you can just download that and plonk it in there. So example underscore flower underscore pot, and then just save, close it, and if you come back into here, let it load, maybe hello. Oh, I accidentally put it in recipes, didn't I? I did. Oops. Refactor. Fantastic. So now it's in here, and it should all be good and done. So let's once again go and run the game, and let's see if it works. And voila, if we grab our flour, which I don't know where that's gone, then we should be able to place down our pot and place a flower in it. Apparently not. Okay, so I have just gone and had a look at my code that I was looking at, and we missed something. So there was two things that I slightly messed up. So let's just close this. Okay, the first thing, let's come into our main class, and actually let's not do it in our main class. Let's create a new class. Let's call this mod common event, right? This is going to be another event class, and that means it once again needs the mod.event.subscriber annotation, and we need to pass in the mod ID and also the bus, which is bus.mod. Now in here we need a subscribe event. That will be a public static void common setup. Okay, thank you, IntelliJ. And that will take in an FML common setup event. And in here, we need to make sure we do event.enqueue_work. And the reason is because we don't want this to happen straight away. We want this to be enqueued to make sure that it all happens at the right time, because initially this event does not really run at the right time per se. It's a little hard to explain without explaining exactly how Forge works internally, but essentially you just need to make sure you enqueue it. And then basically what you need to do is you need to do blocks.flowerpot, and then you want to call add plant. Now this is a method inside of flower pot block. However, because this is stupid, Mojang is stupid, we actually have to make sure we cast this. So let's just cast to a flower pot block. Did that slightly wrong. It's meant to be like that. Like that. I messed up my brackets there. Is that right? No, one more. There we go. Now we can call add plant. And we need to pass in our flower first. And to do that, there's actually a really simple way. So we can do block init dot example flower. Now, for whatever reason, this requires a resource location, which is really strange. I don't know why it doesn't just ask for the block, but whatever. We can just use get ID, and that just gets the resource location for us. It's pretty nice actually. And as the second parameter, this is what the actual full flower pot block will be. So that can just be block init dot example flower pot. And as I was saying earlier, this already works because registry objects are essentially suppliers. And fantastic, that will work. And you can just do that for all of your blocks. Fantastic. So now we should be able to go ahead and rerun the game. Oh, and it should work this time. And here we are. So if we place down our pot, we can now place in the flower. And fantastic. And obviously that will not break like that because of course that's not how flower pots work. I completely forgot for a second. But yeah, so that should actually be our block, which we can check F3. If we go on the right, you can see up here example flower pot, and obviously example flower and flower pot. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, that is it. So I hope you guys did find this tutorial useful. If you did, please do be sure to smash your face into that like button and subscribe. If you really enjoyed and found it useful, please do be sure to share it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Goodbye.